there's some uncertainty with both UCF and Kansas State, not necessarily as a whole or a huge concern, but Kansas State's coming off a disappointing loss to Missouri, and UCF is looking at their new quarterback and wondering what the offense is going to look like. The fact that both teams come in and have an opportunity to get on track and build some momentum heading into the rest of Big 12 play says a lot. Both teams, I think UCF coming into the Big 12, there were questions about how competitive could they be. And so far, it looks like this is a team that can definitely be competitive. It's just that the offense might look a little bit different this week. Playing against a Kansas State team, Kansas State can go one of two ways. The loss last week, there can be a hangover effect and they lose two in a row. There also can be a motivating factor where they let last week's loss motivate them and send a message to UCF. I think I'm interested to see what are they able to do to bounce back from that and what do they do to slow down this UCF offense? Because when you look at the film that Kansas State watches, with John Rice Plumlee being hurt, it means Timmy McClain will take over at quarterback. Well, we'll see what Plumlee's health looks like later in the week as this goes on. But the offense you prepare for with John Rice Plumlee is different than the one you prepare for with Timmy McClain. And I think that last week we saw an offense in UCF that threw the ball very well. And that's not something we're used to seeing. With John Rice Plumlee, we see them throw the football, but it's primarily a rush first offense. With Timmy McClain, there's more talent in terms of being able to throw the football. And with the amount of playmakers they have in offense, that almost might put them in a better position for this game. If Plumlee's not 100%, obviously he shouldn't go. And McClain's, I think, ability to step up and make big plays will help them tremendously. And he can also run if he needs to. Kansas State has 2 games of John Rice Plumlee and also all of last year to use to game plan for, but you only have 1 game of Tim McClain on UCF. Yes, you could go back to his USF days and see what he does well, and I'm sure Kansas State did that. But you don't know what he can do in this UCF offense unless you look at last week. And you obviously don't want to base everything off of 1 week, but you have a number of playmakers around him that can be utilized in an efficient manner and in an explosive manner. And the passing attack now takes on a new form. It takes on a new look, and Kansas State has to account for that. Like I mentioned before, can Kansas State bounce back after a tough loss? Because, like I said, you can either be woe is me, last week sucked, we lost. That's really unfortunate. And then UCF doesn't care and boat races you in their first Big 12 game. There's also the fact that I believe Chris Kleiman has this program in a good place where if they lose 1 game, they will be motivated and figure things out the next game. So there is a matter of which team do we see for Kansas State? Is this a team that is ready to move on, or is it a team that's living in the past? I think the biggest thing is the pass defense. We mentioned how now that Timmy McClain is running this UCF offense, you're looking at a very different scheme. You're looking at a very different type of production. And Kobe Hudson so far has made a lot of teams look ridiculous. He has 325 yards already this season. He's averaging 21.7 yards per catch. And Kansas State struggled to slow down Luther Burden. Can Kobe Hudson do what Luther Burden did to them last week? That will play a big role in determining this outcome. I think the other thing is limiting disruptions. Both groups, defensive line and linebacker groups, are some of the best in college football at being disruptive. Kansas State has 28 tackles for loss already this year. UCF has 20. When you look at the playmakers they have up front, even though Kansas State lost Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, you have a group that can be very disruptive, that will make a ton of plays. Daniel Green's explosive, Austin Moore's explosive, Khalid Duke. There's so many options you can utilize on that defense. On the flip side, Trayvon Morris Brash is having one of his best seasons of his career. And that's just one player to keep an eye out for. Jason Johnson, Josh Sellisgard. There are plenty of guys you've seen in the past that have been disruptive, and a number of them are doing it again in 2023. So, which offense and which offensive line has a better performance goes a long way in determining how explosive the offenses can be and what they can do to be able to move forward and win this football game. That also goes into how effective the quarterbacks can be, because if these quarterbacks have time to throw, they look really good. I think both Timmy McClain and Will Howard are super underrated. There's still a little wait and see factor with them, but I do believe they have what it takes to be explosive playmakers. And if they're given time, they can gash up any defense. And McLean has done that at USF and now at UCF. He has a little bit more talent than he did at USF now that he's with the Knights. And last week we saw his potential 374 yards for the season, 2 touchdowns for him. Will Howard's at 817, 8 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. Will Howard throws a really nice ball. I think he is one of the more underrated quarterbacks that we'll see this year. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for this offense. I think that the rushing attack with DJ Giddens and Trayshawn Ward is really good. Phillip Brooks has had a breakout year, but Will Howard is the player that makes everything go. And again, protecting Will Howard, open up running lanes against this UCF front goes a long way in the explosiveness of this offense. Same thing for UCF. If Timmy McLean is running for his life, he can pick up yards. You want to be able to let him sit back and throw. This is probably the first time under Gus Malzahn with this UCF offense that you can truly say you should be worried about the passing attack being a major factor. I think this is the first time that Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson actually become go-to weapons because no offense to John Rice Plumlee, we've seen him be really good at times. I think people underrate his ability to throw the football at times, but I think that you're looking at a consistent play with McLean in terms of being able to throw the ball downfield. Throws a really nice pass. He throws a really good deep ball at times too, and he's very accurate. And that will help UCF a lot in their bid for an upset here against Kansas State and to be able to get their Big 12 career off to a great start. There are a number of playmakers on both sides that will play a big role in that. And we talked about Trayvon Morris Brash, absolute monster right now, having a huge year, 7.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks already in just 3 games. Then we talked about Kobe Hudson, his ability to make big plays and take the top off the defense plays a huge role in what this team can do. RJ Harvey is an absolute workhorse at running back, and he continues to fly under the radar because most people are focusing on the quarterbacks or the wide receiver position. On the flip side, like I mentioned before, Phillip Brooks having a big year, and we really needed to see that from a team that is losing Malik Knowles as a go-to wide receiver. Phillip Brooks so far has stepped up and played a big role. Ben Sonata, tight end, has also done the same. Austin Moore, someone who a lot of people didn't expect to have a big year and wasn't considered one of the top defenders, having a big year and leading the team in tackles. So this is once again a Kansas State defense that has a number of playmakers. They have good depth, and they are going to be able to make life difficult for UCF. The biggest question, like I mentioned before, is which Kansas State team do we see? If you look at Chris Kleiman's history, I think you'll see a team that can bounce back. I think this is a team that obviously was not pleased with how last week turned out, and now they are looking to make sure that doesn't happen 2 weeks in a row. If if UCF had John Rice Plumlee, I think I would like Kansas State's chances better. And it's weird to say that I trust Timmy McLean more than I would trust John Rice Plumlee, just because he can throw the ball better. Now, we shouldn't go too far and base everything off of 1 week, but you're also looking at a Kansas State team that is ready to make McLean look silly and force him into some bad decisions. If Kansas State is motivated and ready to go, which I believe they will, then they'll probably win this game. But you cannot allow a team like UCF to get going. If I have to pick this game, which I will, it's not easy. I think this is the toughest week in terms of picking games to be able to find some proven winners, to be able to find some essentially some elite playmakers that are going to make a huge difference. And a lot of these games feature guys that can do that on both sides. So finding a way to pick a proven winner won't be easy. If I have to pick right now, I'm going to go with UCF. I think the fact that we saw what Missouri could do last week against this Kansas State offense or this Kansas State defense, I think that UCF will find a way to do something similar. Kobe Hudson can do what Luther Burden did to them. And Timmy McLean has a big playability, and that I think is the difference. If Kansas State is motivated and finds ways to limit explosive plays, they will win this game. But right now, I think that UCF has the advantage. They have a blueprint of how to beat Kansas State, and they'll be able to take advantage of that in week 4.